Love cannot be brute forced. Love is the culmination of a series of falling outcomes caused or brought about by environmental XYZ conditions. Examples of this process and system in action would be growing flowers or vegetables, baking bread in the oven, falling pregnant, or falling asleep. If you've been following me for a little bit so far, you'd be noticing that I'm actually going off a post that I made earlier where I'm literally just copying and pasting my written words into now verbal words. And from these statements, I thought I'd make a little series here. If you are watching me so far, you would sort of maybe connect the dots. And this series is all about the mechanics of rejection, why you were rejected by someone you were romantically interested in, why you yourself may have rejected someone who was romantically interested in you. And quite frankly, one of the most simple reasons out there of why people reject other people is because you cannot brute force this thing into existence. So you try to grow flowers, right? You cannot brute force that thing into existence. You try to bake a loaf of bread in the oven. If you try doing that for the first time, I guarantee you're going to really suck at it. You try growing vegetables for the first time, you are going to suck at it. I literally, in my backyard, I've tried growing corn and I actually sucked at it. But if you were to continually keep practicing this is what gets you in a much better position to create love, to let love fall onto you. Falling asleep is probably one of the easier things that people are capable of because it is a detrimental requirement for human survival. Baking bread perhaps may have been once something people used to do a lot more back in the day, but is now a forgotten art, except to the bakers. Falling pregnant is quite easy, generally speaking. The only problem is now there's a lot of lack of accountability when it comes to falling pregnant, and there's a lot of degeneracy out there, a lot of promiscuity. And when people are threatened by this promiscuous consequence, the subject of abortion will arise. But I digress. We are talking about love here specifically, and love is far more psychological, much less tangible than all of these other falling outcomes. Falling asleep is probably the closest you can get to a similarity between love. But if you look at the growing of the flowers, or if you look at the baking of the bread, or if you even just look at the falling pregnant, you'll see that there is a system involved. And this system compromises of multiple components. And all of these components need to work harmoniously together in order to function and create this so-called falling outcome. Like falling asleep, you need somewhere to lay down or, position yourself. And you just close your eyes and you let yourself wait it out. You just let it happen. You let the slumber fall into you. You become one with the dream state or the darkness. My favorite example of these components working in harmonious order is the operation of the automobile. What happens when you remove a wheel from a car? Is it still a car? Well, yes, it's still a car. It just won't function. It's not going to operate in the manner that it needs to for the purpose that it's intended to, right? So if you remove certain components from a system, the system is still a system. It's just broken or missing a piece. And likewise, if someone is failing to fall in love with you, it is probably because there is a component in the system that is missing or broken or needs an upgrade. There's more than one way to skin a cat. So you can have multiple different cars, but all these different cars, they're not compatible with other cars, right? They have to operate in their own unique systems. Love operates in a very similar manner. Now, the reason people reject us is because if we are brute forcing this into existence, that is a mechanism that is not operational. Willpower is not possible when it comes to falling in love. Willpower can be used as a byproduct as a result of love, but in the reverse direction, willpower cannot necessarily create love. You cannot sort of brute force yourself to love someone else, and you can't necessarily have someone be brute forced into loving you. And so even if, let's say, you are an empathetic being and you understand compassionately where the other person is coming from, that does put you in a tremendously superior position on the mental scale and the emotional scale, perhaps even the spiritual scale. But still, if you're trying to do this because you are tethered to the outcome, in a sense, you are still trying to brute force this love that you seek into existence. You still seek to be loved, and you're only trying to be compassionate and understanding because you want something from the other party, then love isn't going to operate because you're trying to brute force it. If someone was to try to do this to you, would you really feel compelled to or drawn to that person who is brute forcing themselves, literally kind of sacrificing the self in a sense? Yes, they love you, actually. They probably do if they're doing that. But do they actually have self-love? Do they have the capacity to love themselves? Because if you have someone who is using a lot of their willpower, struggling to use that willpower, doing everything they can to ensure that you're happy, to ensure that everything goes perfectly, that person is going to be exhausted and they actually don't have enough energy for even themselves. It will be seen as a facade. But the person who is operating from a place of calm, untetheredness, you could say, detachment, non-attachment, even non-action, this person, when he gives out love and when he gives out his willpower, that person is operating from a much higher level where the love that he gives is really just a trickle. It trickles out of him. It comes out of him. It pours out of him naturally. He's not brute forcing this into existence. And if you were a recipient of that, then you might be like, you know what, that's nice. I like that. This person clearly loves himself or even herself. And you may feel drawn to that person who is loving themselves. Generally, this is what a lot of people do. A lot of people seem to fall head over heels for narcissists, generally speaking. And narcissists portray a version of themselves that appear to love themselves, but really deep down they have a really deep void, right? But what gets people hooked is that they see that this person takes care of themselves tremendously, and that is attractive. What's not attractive is deep down, is there an empty pit, a void, and the only person who can fill that void is themselves. Narcissism is actually a hatred for the self, actually. So remember, in the end, if you're going out on dates, or if you're becoming more romantically involved with someone, or you are already in a relationship with someone, or there is a situationship that has developed, remember to be patient. Take a form of non-action. Take a step back. Look at the situation from an impartial perspective. Look at the components in the system. Examine the laws of the universe and how they interact with each other. Look for what might be broken. Look for patterns. Dig deep beneath the different layers. And if you know anything about perhaps mental espionage, do not become someone whom the other party would resist. Do not be someone who they have to put their walls up. Be someone where they would actually willingly tear their own walls down. Let them come to you on their own accord. If you, likewise, fall in love with someone else, you would prefer to do so on your own accord. This isn't about mutual agreement per se. This is about letting things happen naturally. And you actually become someone so competent that you actually let things happen naturally around you, because that's a side effect of your impartiality. It's a side effect of your competence and your understanding. You don't need to brute force love because you love yourself already.